Ninjas were cool in the 1980s. It didn't matter if you were a ninja warrior, a ninja turtle, or a ninja hamster. Tie a long piece of cloth around your forehead, and all of a sudden, you're a certified gnarly badass.
Okay, the game is Shinobi.
Sega was one of many companies to capitalize on this. Like many great franchises, it started in the arcades, and players wanted a way to take it home.
Of your favorite arcade game.
Shinobi later hit things like the NES and Master System.
Got your throwing stars, your bombs, your nunchucks. Nice.
But in 1989, out of the shadows of blast processing, leapt Revenge of Shinobi, and later, Shinobi 3, both instant classics. To this day, they're considered to be some of the greatest Genesis games ever, hailed by many as the best in the series. Revenge pushed players to master each level through memorization, precision, and pure skill. A few years later, Shinobi 3 took what made Revenge good and ran with it. They put you on horseback rides, surfboard fights, and battles against massive bosses, putting the Genesis console to hard work. It's considered to be an even better and faithful sequel. Slather on some radical tunes and you've cooked up a scrumptious couple of games.
Hey, how about some Zoom Ball?
Now it's September 1995.
Zoom Ball's the fastest glide you've ever tried.
The Sega Saturn's been out for almost 4 months, and it barely has more than a dozen games. None of them use the beloved IPs on the Genesis. Strange, since those IPs would probably help the Saturn right about now. Fear not, Shinobi Legions emerges from the treetops to fill the gap. Produced in-house, exclusively for the Saturn, now with live-action sprites and all new moves. This ought to tide us over until the new Sonic game finally comes out. The Saturn is getting a mainline Sonic game, right? Of course, that would be silly if they... Sega is all about arcade-style games. Play gradually challenging stages with limited chances, start over when you die, and learn to overcome through muscle memory and faster reflexes. It's not about leveling up the character with experience points. It's about leveling up you with real experience. Practice, learn by dying, get better, and eventually win. This era lives on that style of gameplay. Shinobi is a classic example. It's tough as nails for first-timers. You'll face off against seemingly impossible bosses, wondering how you could possibly beat the game if the beginning is this punishing. But you learn the attack patterns and weaknesses, and later slice through them like butter, getting further and further with each play. To understand Shinobi Legions, we must first understand the Genesis Shinobis. Projectiles are your main attack in both Revenge and 3. Ammo is easy to find. If you run out or press attack while close to a bad guy, Joe Musashi slashes with his blade. You can't just slash whenever you want though. The attack button will launch a shuriken by default. You also have temporary magic powers like invincibility. Stages will force you to use double jumps more and more. To pull off a double jump, it must be timed correctly. Press C just after the top of your jump. It's hard to pull off consistently. If you don't perfect it, you will fall to your death later on in the game. Boxes leave behind health, more shurikens, extra lives, and bombs. I don't mean bombs you can use, I mean bombs that can hurt you. I personally think this is a dumb obstacle, but that's just me. Getting hit can knock you off ledges, so that kinda sucks too. These games are hard, but rewarding when you finally learn how to stomp them. The music in Revenge, composed by the great Yozo Koshiro, is still celebrated. Graphically, Shinobi 3 is an outstanding upgrade. It's simply beautiful. Now we transition to the 32-bit age. Mortal Kombat is so cool that other games used its live-action sprite technique. Now Sega wants to use it for Shinobi. Pictures of actors and digitized renderings are woven together for another futuristic ninja adventure, taking down the forces of the biotechnological, mythical, and bizarre. The 5th gen was all about trying new things just for the sake of trying them, so why not? The quality of this look varies. Sho, not Joe, looks alright. The digitized sprites don't slow down his movement. Many of his enemies look decent too. You can clearly see the details of the boss's face, and the kung fu moves look slick. Good blood effects and magical flames are well edited into the digitized snapshots. Some of the other characters look downright goofy. Like, what is this guy? Things like the massive phallic snake dino are so bad, they kind of add to the mid-90s charm. Shout out to the little green Ridleys. I honestly thought these graphics would ruin the Shinobi experience, but it gives off a special charm. There's no action game that looks quite like this. I dig it, and also hope they never do it again. The bizarre visual splendor was not the only big departure from Genesis Shinobi. Your attacks are also different. Sho still has shurikens, but they don't shoot out as quickly, and ammo is scarce. So to make up for this, Shinobi Legions has more than one attack button. While A throws shurikens, B does sword attacks. At long last, you can slash enemies whenever the hell you want. Sho is graced with true American freedom. This lets you do combos, dash attacks, slash in the air, landing stabs, screw attacks, quick jabs from side to side, and the ultimate power move, deflect enemy projectiles if timed right. Bah! It hurts them too. But wait, it gets better. Y and Z block. Yes, you can block now. If you press block in the air, Sho lets out a unique aerial slash, arcing from below to in front. A very effective move since it covers lots of space. All of the attacks and blocks come out quick, properly rewarding fast reflexes, making Sho feel like a true ninja. You still get temporary magical abilities, but they must be found first. The double jump is still there, and it still has to be timed correctly. Shinobi Legions is a slightly easier game, partially because you have more attacks. It definitely has its challenging stages and boss fights that absolutely require practice. You will learn by dying. But you're given more lives, more chances at gaining lives, and 5 continues. Collecting 10 blue orbs grants a 1-up, and they're everywhere. Yellow and red orbs restore health. Still, it will take multiple game overs to get a handle on certain bosses, and eventually attain total victory. The first couple of levels are pretty introductory. Stage 1 is a simple walk through waves of ninja grunts. You quickly learn how your attacks work, and how to best approach certain bad guys. The first boss is where difficulty takes a noticeable departure from Revenge and 3. In Revenge, the first boss requires you to learn its attack pattern, countering its slashes with well-aimed shuriken throws. If you try to spam him, you will almost certainly die. The first boss in Legions can easily be spammed to death. No skill required. If your health bar is full, you will not die by spamming it with your sword. No need to learn, just hack, slash, and win. Later on, the boss fights do get more challenging and will require you to learn their attacks. Stage 3's boss, for example, Meta Ridley, is the first point in Legions where mindlessly spamming doesn't work. This is when it becomes more true to the grinding difficulty of Genesis Shinobis. You actually have to practice. Stage 2's platforming section is where you're forced to learn the double jump, making your way up these tree branches while slicing your way through some extra sneaky enemies. Stages 3 and 4 pit you against enemies that need to be killed with a particular strategy. For example, these bazooka-wielding Russians will block straight shots. So the best approach is to use the somersault slash from above. In Stage 4, you're introduced to these fast Donnie Yen wannabes. If you dash attack them, it'll hit them almost every time. White Samurais? Wait until they jump before slashing. Like any good arcade-style adventure, you'll be slicing through more and more levels without dying the more you get game overs, memorizing the best strategies, and getting closer to the end with each attempt. There's a minecart level. It really sucks at first, but with experience, it gets easier. While riding, you get attacked from both sides, but you also have to dodge stalactites and double jump from one cart to another. I died a lot here. It's also the one level that does not have checkpoints, but when you beat it, you're rewarded with actually fun elevator combat. Pro Panda Tip! If you stand at the back of the cart while blocking forward, you will stay protected from just about every attack. Just be sure to slash enemies as soon as they land, and then return to this position. You'll occasionally need to jump around to collect items and dodge stuff. There are 9 stages. Stage 4 is where the boys become men. Stage 6 is where the men become ninjas. Stage 7 is where the ninjas get knocked into the fucking water. Hong Kong is a brutal town. At some point, you'll learn how to wall jump. Hold the D-pad in the direction of the wall while pressing jump. Sho will leap from the wall, allowing you to do the double jump or jump from another wall. It can be done consecutively. You can jump up the same wall infinitely. Very useful in stage 6. You don't have to time it correctly either, just hold the D-pad into the wall and rapidly press jump. It is at this point when the player finds out Sho is infused with bird DNA. As many wise men once said, they don't make him like this anymore. After every stage, you get to keep watching more pieces of this B-movie ninja flick. It's not a cinematic masterpiece, but if you dig old kung fu movies, you'll be able to extract some joy from these. Soak in the 80s power drums and this sultry fight choreography. It's totally metal. The plot centers around your evil twin repeatedly kidnapping who I'm assuming is Sho's special friend. Your brother, Kazuma, is after an ultimate energy which can only be obtained by letting a woman's pure mind power control a man's inner strength. Symbolism of society? I don't know. It's so powerful, slicing through a boulder is just a fraction of what it can do. Only Sho and Aya know how to do it, and the master who taught them is dead. This Eastern-influenced soundtrack is especially when compared to the incredible tunes in Revenge and 3. This led to a well-known and hilarious debacle. Sega of Europe delayed their localization. Producer David Nolte hated the music so much, he commissioned someone else to change it. Composer Richard Jacques enters the arena. Jacques gave it really good sounding tunes, taking some inspiration from Revenge. I personally think this redone soundtrack is among the very best music to hit the Sega Saturn. Jacques went on to compose Jet Grind Radio, several other Sega games, and the first Mass Effect. So, if you want to play Shinobi Legions, go with the European port. Sadly, I gotta stick with the American version for this review. Sorry, pal. This isn't PandaMonium reviews every European Saturn game. Fun fact! It is not publicly known who designed Shinobi Legions. We know Sega developed it, but the credits only show the people who worked on the cutscenes, not the game. They're not listed in the manual or the game itself. Are we just supposed to assume who made it? I mean, credits don't really matter that much. It's just kind of strange they didn't give specific people credit for making the damn thing. If someone out there has the answer, please tell me and I'll make a follow-up video. Even though Legions is a somewhat different take on Genesis Shinobi, critics of the time gave it great to average review scores. GamePro's Atomic Dog friggin' loved this thing. One of the highest rated Saturn games I've ever seen up in this publication. Their rating was half a point away from their Panzer Dragoon review, arguably the best game on the console so far. Others were a bit more conservative. Next Generation gave it a short, plain description, rating it 3 out of 5. Many of the other big-name critics gave it a B-, while the players of today tend to see it as slightly less than average. What's strange is even though Europe made this game better, UK critics did not like it as much as the Americans did. Some hated it. Edge savagely called it a waste of a game. In its premiere November issue, the legendary British Sega Saturn magazine gave it a 3 out of 5, saying it plays really, really well, but looks like a Mega Drive game, calling the FMVs tacky. It got a healthy amount of print advertisements. I personally think some potential was lost here. Sega could have made something beautiful with a 32-bit Shinobi, Imagine what it would be if they put in the same amount of craftsmanship they gave to Shinobi 3. It would have been incredible, but instead, they pandered to the dying fad of real-life sprites and FMVs. Again, and I can't stress this enough, the graphical style of Legions is not a bad thing. It doesn't hold the gameplay down at all, and looks good most of the time. If anything, it makes this stand out in the series as a fun reminder of mid-90s ideas, but it could have been a souped-up successor to this.
Hey,
Shinobi.
bad.
この右京左京
Still fun, it's just not a full realization of what the Saturn can do for this franchise. If you're not strictly attached to the traditional Shinobi formula, you'll more than likely have some fun playing Legions. The fresh new moves and block mechanics add a lot to this series without overcomplicating the game. I personally enjoyed it, and will continue to play it for fun after posting this review. But for the love of Chairman Segata, play the European version. It's not better than Revenge or 3, but it still keeps up with excellent gameplay. Try before you buy, but certainly don't brush it off as a bad attempt.
Sonic Splash Zoom Ball, the world's fastest way to get wet.
Ninja game Shinobi. Games like Shinobi, the ultimate ninja must defeat 7 terrorists through 4 exciting levels of play to free the kidnapped children of world leaders.
Shinobi will give you a perfect, streak-free result every time.